Welcome to the Life Hacks Podcast, where everyone is a student of life. Sometimes we get life completely right, and sometimes we get it completely wrong. I am your host, Steve Smith. On today's episode, it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He is a well-established barbecue pitmaster and a business owner and operator at the Rub Cage Barbecue, located in southern West Virginia, where he helps the local population with their issues related to their hunger, starvation, and barbecue food cravings. He is a physical education major from the West Virginia University. He was also a 5-star high school football recruit and a USA Today top 100 listed tight end. He was recruited by several high-profile Division I colleges throughout the country and decided to accept his full-ride scholarship from his home state college, the West Virginia University. He is also a well-established family man, a father, and a husband. And last but not least, he is the only Appalachian woodburger in the world who loves to cuddle up in Koji PJs and a glass full of wine and watch his most favorite movie series of all time, the Twilight movies, while also rooting for his most favorite team, Team Jacob.
Oh my God. There's been some research done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give your undivided attention and a warm welcome to my very special Life Hacks guest and my fellow West Virginia hillbilly, Caleb Cooper. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, wow, that was a special introduction, to say the least. I don't know if I'm warm and cozy or really embarrassed. Got me on the Twilight. See, wow, there's been some research done, huh?
Yeah, I know a guy that knows you.
I'll get him. I'll wait till he falls asleep tonight.
Yeah, I hit him up last night. I'm like, hey, man, give me some scoop on Caleb.
If he can see how beat red my face is right now. Okay. Well done, Gregory. Well done.
Oh, man. Hey, man, I'm glad you come down. We've been talking off the mic. You know, today's actually the first day I've met you in face. So, you know, we've been talking on Messenger, trying to hook this thing up for a couple weeks. And I really appreciate you coming down, man.
Man, let me just tell you, I am a huge fanboy of podcasts anyway.
Awesome.
So when our mutual friend there that is now on the shit list told me, he said, hey, man, he probably have you on. I was just, man, I got giddy and I couldn't be more excited to be here. You're awesome dude of what I've, we've got to talk a few times and I'm too happy to even put it into words right now.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Yeah. Greg hit me up after, for all you folks don't know, Caleb and my buddy Greg that was on a previous episode, they are really good friends. They went to college together. So Greg hit me up after our episode and was like, hey, you got to contact my buddy Caleb. He has an outstanding story. And we got to talking about it off mic and wow, man, you have an outstanding story. And we're going to dive into that sucker later on. But yeah, like I said, man, I really appreciate you coming down and hopefully we can talk about this thing. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, very happy to be here, man. I've got a story that's, it's 20 years old now, but a lot of those lessons still, at one point of the day, every day, that story is, I'm always reminded of what happened. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to be here, and we'll talk a little barbecue, do a little bit of everything.
Yes. Speaking of barbecue, my friend, like I mentioned in his intro, he runs his own barbecue joint. It's like a private catering service at the moment, right?
Yeah, man. Right out of my driveway.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've been a private caterer for years and, was fortunate enough to have a smoker built and it's mobile. So it's a pull behind. And, I I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. I knew I loved to cook, right?
Yeah.
I started cooking wing nights in college, and I got really into making the sauces. That's how I started cooking, right? So we would have wing night every Tuesday. I'd make sauces for it, and one thing led to another. Well, when I finally got home, I spent about 10 years in Morgantown and had this smoker made and everything, and decided that I could start doing small parties here and there. I've stayed very small over the years and always did more private things for small parties and stuff. And then it just kind of grew into something. But yeah, I work out of my driveway now.
That's awesome.
1 or 2 days a week. Publicly, people will submit I'll post something every Thursday and people order through the comments. And it's been quite a ride, man. It's been different. But, I've learned so much over the years, and it's just been it's been wild to see how much I didn't know or I don't know about barbecue.
No doubt, right?
When you get into a niche of something like your hobby or whatever it may be, yours is the audio world, music and stuff, and it can be overwhelming unless you want to be just a student and open book to that world, and then it's okay. You just kind of say, well, I'm not there yet, but. Nothing is never wasted, right? You're going to learn something, whether it be good or bad. You're going to learn what not to do next time.
Absolutely.
If you do mess up. And I've messed up a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. Barbecue, I've just gotten into it this year, and I love it, dude. I enjoy it to death. And you're right, man. You can mess something up real quick in the barbecue world.
Yeah, real quick and real slow at the same time. Because if you're the thing that people forget about, or they're so quick to conveniently forget how long it takes to smoke a piece of meat, right?
Yes, I know the feeling.
So they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to smoke barbecue." I'm sure you do, buddy. Come see me if you
got 8 or 10 hours.
Yeah, if you got to do a whole hog or something, come see me in about 16 hours. When you get done with that, you make. Then maybe you can tell me if you still want to smoke barbecue for a living. Because a lot of those guys that are just, the hobby smokers and stuff, which I support. Sure, I don't want to sound like I'm an uppity.
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
The Traeger, the pellet burners and stuff have really come a long way. And now everybody can get in on it. It's kind of like the whole craft beer movement. A lot of people started brewing beer out of their homes. And they started putting a lot of these barbecue competitions on TV a few years ago. That got really big. And they've made it to where the everyday Joe can get out there and barbecue a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's a great thing, man.
That's how I got into it. I have just a small pit, but it's a stick burner, but it's just a small chamber. It's the Oklahoma Joe's version. But one of my buddies out west, he's like, man, you got to get into this. I'm like, yeah, COVID hit. I'm like, let's do it. Here I am, and I'm making ribs and briskets and stuff. Of course, at small quantities, but man, I love it. I love it.
Oh, it's, one of my favorite things to cook is brisket. And you had asked me a little bit about brisket, and it's not that big in this area. So, right. So West Virginia, barbecue in West Virginia, it's different. It's really different because, the big barbecue states, smoke barbecue is Texas. And then down south, you've got Alabama and Mississippi, all those guys, the way they do theirs, Memphis, and even the Carolinas are different. West Virginia doesn't have like a trade, a trademark. This is the way we do barbecue. Right. We don't have that. We don't have any professional teams. Poor West Virginia, right? So I've had to take all that and just kind of take the pieces that I like from it, right? Yeah. And I have a very bad sweet tooth, man. So most of my stuff revolves around fruit, just a more savory, sweeter profile, right? Nice. But the briskets, man, you were asking, what do you do to briskets, man? Briskets that's my favorite, right? And this turns out to be the hardest thing to do. And, a lot of people, when I try to do briskets out the house, I'll serve anywhere from sometimes 60 up to 100 some people a week, right? Wow. On that day. So, but when I do briskets is always like 10 or 15 people. They're like, we'll take a brisket. You don't know what you're missing out, right? So, but thank goodness though, because they're hard to come by, man. Even around here at the butcher shops, like I can only get the flats, which is the end piece of the brisket. Don't even have the point on it. So unless I order it from Greg or something, it's hard to come across a full brisket. And but they're a labor of love.
They are. That's pretty much what I've been doing is flats, just because I don't feel like cooking a brisket for, right now with my schedule, I'm not digging in for no 12 hours,
Right.
So I'm getting flats and getting, 6-8 hours out of them.
Are you wrapping your briskets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you wrapping them in full or butcher paper?
Well, I just now bought some butcher paper, so I'm about to graduate out of my panties and go to butcher paper.
Well, you know what, man? In the world of barbecue, man, I'll never try to tell anybody this is the way you do it. This is not the way you do it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different avenues to take. But I want to tell you something, man. I've done a lot of briskets, messed up a lot of briskets. I've messed up tons of briskets. But when I finally made the jump over to butcher paper, and that's when I really started to succeed and get really nice briskets.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I don't know why. I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works, but I do know I've messed up less brisket because that's how I measure whether I'm. That's how I measure if I pulled off a brisket.
Nice.
As if I messed it up. And the brisket paper, the butcher paper really does something to that piece of meat. And it's not like foil for some reason. Maybe foil gets too hot too quick. I'm not sure what it is.
What's happening to me.
And, that whole low and slow thing.
Yeah.
So
I have a trouble with my pit's pretty small, and I have trouble running a low temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Even with a small fire. Man, that sucker just wants to run 270-ish all the time. And if I drop below 250 into the 240, 230s, that fire is only going to last 5-10 minutes and it's starting to die off. And so with my small chamber, I found some ways to burn a hot fire, but escape a lot of that heat before it hits my chamber. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm not feeding wood every freaking 5 minutes.
It's rough, man.
It is. So I'll stoke it, but I'll escape a lot of that heat before it even hits the chamber. I've kind of figured out a way to keep it in the 250, 270 range that way.
Now my big boy, what I call big boy, that's my big smoker. I can do right at 100 racks of baby backs at a time. I can do 66 whole chickens at once. So I've got one, but what I noticed was, it's the hot box isn't huge on that, so I don't have the problem. I've got a big space to heat up. I don't ever get too hot there.
Right.
But I did buy some smaller stick burners that run off charcoal, and then I put the cherry wood on top because I only use cherry wood.
Nice.
And those small spaces, once you get it to the air you want to close off all your air, and it'll hold.
Gotcha.
That's what I've learned anyway, and I'm new to that world of as well. But I did learn that if you cut the air off to that thing, once you get it to where you need it and shut it down, it'll hold that temperature for as long as you need it.
Nice.
Well, for the cooking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you worry about your white smoke very much at that point?
Well, you want to make sure you're pushed through that point.
Gotcha. Okay. I see what you're saying. So post the white smoke.
Get the dirty smoke out of there, and then that way everything's burning clean.
Nice. And then just shut it down almost, right?
And then you can always soak your chips and stuff. That kind of helps.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Very nice. So what do you think your number one secret weapon is to making your briskets?
Oh, well, I think I've already talked about it. It's that butcher paper, man. Because I keep it real simple, man. That beef is such a good meat. You're right. You don't have to do a lot to it. So salt and pepper and let it rip.
I'm with you.
I don't sit there and throw a bunch of different spices and stuff. It's not needed.
Yes.
Beef is like so
salt,
good.
pepper. Pretty much nothing on beef is awesome.
Right. Now, what I did learn was whether there's always the big battle or argument over fat side up or fat side down. And what I found was I did fat side down in the beginning before I wrapped, right? So it'll protect it from the heat.
Yep.
Okay. And then when it goes into the wrap, you can put it on top. That way, when it melts and you get it to 200, it'll start to melt down over your meat.
Nice.
Okay. So you get the best of both worlds a little bit. It'll keep you from drying out to start, and then it'll once it melts, because at 200 to 205, that's when fat and collagen starts to melt, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. That's what I've been hearing too.
Yeah. So I think I'm doing it right. Like I said, man, I've messed up a ton.
Right.
I did not arrive at this in no short order.
Sure.
But that's what I've found. The butcher paper is my secret weapon, and it's no secret, right?
So you fat side down to start always, and then flip it in the paper?
Yep.
Nice. Okay. See, I've been doing fat side down all the way through.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been good so far. But,
and you know what? There's probably nothing wrong with that.
But I'm ready to try the fat side up thing, just because
because think about it.
The guys I follow do that.
As that melts, it's got nowhere to go but down through the meat, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So at first you'll want to protect it with the fat, and then after that You'll melt it down through the fat when you flip
Hot
it.
dog.
Right?
Oh, man. I'm going to go buy a brisket tonight.
That stuff's expensive, man.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
So, how has COVID affected your business right now? Is it shrinking or growing?
Oh, man. It's the craziest thing. I'm just in the middle of this whirlwind, to be honest with you. It has really put my business over the top, man.
No way. That's awesome.
Last year, I decided to do turkeys and hams for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Whoa.
And that went really well. That was like the only public stuff I was doing at the time. Like I said, I was mostly private catering. And then Easter came along, and I was doing hams again for Easter. And that went really well. And then I just happened to put a video on Facebook of me doing some ribs for the family.
Yeah.
And, this was coming off of all that success through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. And people around, I live in a small community in Wyoming County.
Sure.
Right? People know who I am. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like, oh, they know me, right? But people know that I cook barbecue. Well, coming off of this, there was, there was some buzz around it, but nothing crazy. Well, I made those ribs and COVID hit, and I posted that video on there. And people went nuts. I mean, the ribs did look really good. Yeah. But people went nuts. They were like, oh, man, can I get this? Can I get this? Can I get... I was like, okay. So I let people order, and I was like, whoa. The first couple of weeks, I was doing like 60 racks a week, 85 racks a week, 105 racks at one time. I did 105 one week, and I'll never do it again. I wanted to shoot myself.
Wow.
It was just too much. And it was just too many. It was just I couldn't, but I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I think we might got something here, So I took my 20 years experience of cooking at this point. Like, I'm not a chef or nothing, but I've been cooking in the kitchen. And I started mixing up. I was like, man, people aren't going to want to buy ribs every week.
Yeah.
Right? So I did whole lasagnas. Man, I started doing lasagnas, meatloafs.
No way.
Briskets.
Nice.
Ribs. Then we got some St. Louis ribs we did. Those went well. The smoked meatloaf has been, for whatever reason, the most popular thing.
Really?
Well, that and the...
meatloaf is popular in West Virginia, though. It's a big thing.
And those smoked meatloafs do really well in the smoker. It's crazy.
Nice.
They're really good. So I did the boneless turkey breasts, whole chickens. I try to do something each week, and it has been crazy, man. Ever since it started back in April, March or April, it hasn't stopped. Once a week, I'm cooking for somebody.
That's
twice
awesome,
a week.
Man. That's awesome. That is great to hear. I mean, I love the small business successes that you hear about.
Yeah.
Especially in a local community like ours. Well,
Absolutely.
You live a couple hours away from me, but our communities are very similar. Well, West Virginia alone, I mean, there's only a couple big cities in the state.
Right. And they're not even that big.
And they're not that big. I mean, there might be 10 stoplights in those cities.
Right.
But
that's the first thing when people ask me, where, especially when I was in college and stuff, when I try to tell them how rural where I come from is, and I tell them, we don't even have a stoplight in the whole county.
Same.
And they're like, what do you mean? You mean your town? I said, no, the whole county. So they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Same here, man. Ritchie County is just like, what? Where's that?
Yeah.
Well, man, I know you've listened to a few of our episodes. What we do here at the Life Hacks Podcast is we just talk about life, man. We're all students of life. We're all teachers of life. It's a daily adventure to get through life. I mean, you can either look at it in a positive way or you can look at it in a negative way. And I choose to approach it as positively as I can with, the bumps and bruises that I've learned in life. And there's so much value in, stubbing your toe in life, and nobody likes to do it, but we all have those experiences from stubbing your toe. Man, I don't want to do that again. Or the path that made me go down after that was like, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of the goal of this show, is just to kind of talk about stuff like that. With my guests, I have a few questions kind of already put together for my guests. And I'm just going to start into a few of them now, man. And then we'll just get this thing kind of into the main topic that we are going to talk about.
Sounds good, man.
All right, here we go. How would you describe yourself to a person that doesn't know you? And really, that could be me, because I really don't know you yet. Today's the first day I've met you.
Well, Steve, man, let me tell you a little something about. I don't know, man. I try to be. I don't want to say laid back because that's what Greg said. So I don't want to do that, right? I am laid back, but I try to be I'm a very patient person. I try to be very cerebral, right? I try to take things. I don't try to jump to any conclusions too quick, right? So, I wanna let things play out on their own, organically, if you will. I want to see what's going to happen. I try not to jump into anything. So, I take things for what they are. I don't try to make them something that they're not, right? And I think if you can just manage your expectations, right? I think if you don't try to put something on something that's not going to be there, right?
Great point.
I think you'll. That's what I've found, and that's kind of the way I live my life, man. I try to just go with the flow, man.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, we all have social media accounts, and we see the
anger,
out of people.
You can say, yeah.
The people acting like total assholes, and I hate that. I mean, I understand having something you believe in and be willing to fight tooth and nail for it. Yeah. And believe me, I'm all about fighting for what you believe in too. But the more open-minded we can be,
sure,
towards whatever. I mean, come on, everybody's got an opinion or something about something.
Yeah,
it's worth listening to. At least listening to it.
It's such a mess out there, man. Especially on Facebook. I really. If it didn't help my business so much, I wouldn't be on that daggone thing. I mean, it's just a mess, and people aren't who they really are.
I know.
They're just they live two lives. Everybody lives a duality now, and it's a shame because it's such a useful. It has really catapulted societies around the world.
It is
being able to have access to everyone, but at the same time, man, it's so poisonous. So. My opinion is kick it back, throw it in the garbage, and get away from it.
I agree.
But it does help my barbecue out, so I keep it.
Yeah, I mean, I use a lot of it for my military friends, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep in contact that way. But, I mean, speaking of social media, when I first got on social media, I was interacting a lot with my opinions and beliefs because I just didn't, for one, know any better about a lot of stuff, you know, truthfully. But the older I get, like you said, the more open-minded and chill you can be about things. Listen, just having an ear to listen to somebody, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
When you can listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to respond. You can just listen to them and be a great person that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's value there.
I'm telling you, man. I got into, and this is something I kind of forgot to mention, but when I decided to do barbecue to chase that dream of mine, and work for myself and not anyone else, to kind of supplement my income and stuff, I started doing substitute teaching.
Nice.
And
you're a teacher?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
At the high school I graduated from, right? Yeah, poor kids. Yeah, so you talk about a surreal situation, man. I walked into that high school a couple years ago where I graduated from. Hadn't really been in there for 20 years or 18 or 19 years at that time. And I was like, oh my God, my picture was on the wall and stuff. I'm sitting there looking out like, oh boy, these kids have no idea because I don't look anything like that guy that's hanging up there, right? I'm a little much to take in, especially for like a 14 or 13-year-old kid that's sitting there in my class. I'm like 6'5", 350.
You're
big,
freaking
bushy,
huge, man.
Bushy beard and stuff. So, but that was one I'm trying to get to. Long story short, I'm trying to touch on the fact that people aren't good listeners, man. And that's one of the first things I would say to those kids, because I had to learn that, man. This is definitely a lesson that, I've tried to learn over the years. It's hard to do. People think it's easy. It's not. But listen, just shut up and listen. If you will hear both sides and if you will just take your time with things, I promise you'll save yourself a lot of trouble.
And also, you won't be trying to kill that guy.
Right.
I don't mean kill him, but, you're not going to be freaking bitter about that.
Right. Listening.
Even though you don't have to agree with it, you can listen.
That's right, man.
And just yay or nay it inside your own head.
That's right.
I mean, that's just society in America. I hate to get on a big America rant, but we have lost that technique,
Yeah.
It's gone, man. And I hate that.
90% of the things that you think are so important, they don't make a hill of beans, man.
Exactly.
At the end of the day. When you wake up the next day, it's probably going to be something else, probably worse. So you might as well go ahead and get over that and just move on. Just, really learn to relax a little bit. But, when I told those kids, that was usually one of the first things, man. I told them to study because I didn't study in high school and I had to teach myself how to study once I got to college, you know? Yeah. That's important,
it is,
but I told them to listen, man, because my biggest pet peeve, what I learned was I've never been a teacher before, but 2 seconds after I give instruction, I'd have somebody raise their hand and ask me what the crap I just told them. I just told them something, but they weren't listening.
That's crazy.
And that was kind of after the first week or so. I got to thinking, we need to have a lesson, lecture real quick, or a listening lecture real quick, because man, it just seemed like it was rampant throughout each period, 8 periods throughout the day, 150 kids. It was a underlying topic with it. Each one of them, none of them listened.
Yeah.
So, and I got to thinking, my wife tells me I don't listen all the time either.
Oh, no,
so,
me too.
it's like, man, be a better listener, right? So
Absolutely.
it is a skill.
Very much. And it's underrated. I mean, that skill right there, dude, it's got to be a part of your life. Has to be.
Communication and listening they're so intertwined,
right.
But they're so important.
They are. All right, man, let me hit another question here for you.
Yeah.
What is something about you that might surprise others if they knew?
You mean other than Team Jacob? Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you, Greg. Looking at me, you probably wouldn't think I was scared of spiders.
What?
But oh my God, I hate spiders. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, I don't.
Big guy like you?
Not a big spider guy, man. No, I wish they'd all die. No.
Man, for you guys out there listening, I don't know if you realize how big this dude is, but he is 6'6"?
Almost 6'6", yeah.
And
I got my boots on.
he's healthy. He's healthy. Yeah. He's a big guy.
Yeah, about 350. Yeah.
And you're afraid of spiders.
But the beard weighs about 10 pounds, so I'm about 340. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and probably I like teen movies, man. I'm a sucker for teen movies. Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Like Goonies and Cruel Intentions. Yeah, all those movies, man. I grew up Karate Kid.
Nice.
But I'm a sucker for teen movies, man. I love them.
I love Karate Kid. That was my thing growing up, man.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. People don't even realize it's a genre. It's a genre, man. I mean, if you think about all the good movies, it's that teenage movie. When people ask me, what is that? I'm like, well, like Goonies and stuff.
Right.
I love them.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. I like a lot of those old movies, too. We're, similar ages. I'm probably...
Oh, you're older than
When did you graduate, 2000?
Yeah.
Okay, I was 95, so I'm 5 years older than you. So, yeah, I'm a little bit older than you. All right, man. Hey, I want to start getting into this, the reason why I got you here today. Sure. And I want to start talking about your history, your story. I mean, your story is pretty unique. And I want to start with this, okay?
Yeah.
Who was the most influential person in your life as a teenager or a young adult?
Well, that was obviously my father.
Okay.
No questions, hands down. He was a very big part of my life. He was very active in my life, and he taught me a lot. He was very smart, but he guided me, man. He steered my ship. You know what I mean? Yes. He was a very hands-on parent, and not that my mom wasn't there. My mom was a very big part as well.
Yeah.
And she did her motherly duties. I love her more than anything on this earth now. She's,
sure.
But dad was a very big influence on me, man. He's seen things that I didn't see and that I didn't know were coming, right? And
he was your watchdog.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's going to lead into my next question, I think. Tell me about your high school story, your 5-star recruiting journey, that thing that you are well known for in your area and the whole state of West Virginia, man. I mean, you are a big time story. And tell me about your high school story with football, man. Tell me about that.
Well, where to begin?
You can give me the rundown.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was, it happened. I mean, it happened pretty quick, but once it got going, man, the recruiting process, I've said this many times, that's a nightmare for a 17, 18-year-old kid. I mean, especially when you got these big schools that you've only seen on TV growing up.
Yeah.
Calling your house and you're getting letters in the mail from them and newspapers are wanting to talk to you. For a 17 or 18-year-old kid, I mean, that's why good parents are very important. Mm-hmm. They'll keep you grounded. They'll keep your head on straight. But at the time, I was just like, what's going on, man? Right. I knew, I didn't know to what extent, but until I started traveling to those summer camps, I mean, I knew I was pretty good. I knew I was big and I could run, right? So in high school, I was 6'5", 265, 270. That was my stats. And I ran it probably, touched 4'8", 4'9".
Really?
Yeah. That was why I was such an appealing prospect.
Absolutely.
Because I was big and my frame would allow me to get bigger.
Yeah.
And they knew that I had good feet. So that part went really easily for me. That was something that, I didn't have these performance businesses that were around at the time. This was all pretty much God-given stuff. And I mean, I played sports year round. I played 3 sports, but I didn't do any off-season training or anything like that.
So they saw the potential in that package.
When we travel these camps and stuff, we went to Michigan State, WVU, these camps and stuff, and real quickly it gets, if your head coaches can see it and he puts the name out as well and pushes it alongside those camps and stuff, you'll get some coverage and you'll get looked at and stuff. And so, fast forward a little bit, senior year, you sign usually around Christmas time, New Year. And so signed with WVU. I was recruited by a lot of people from Michigan State down to LSU.
Really?
And then back, not so much out west, but from
east
there,
side, yeah.
Right. I could have probably went to any of those.
That's what I heard, yeah.
And that was cool.
Definitely. I mean, that's a humbling experience, especially for a young kid like that.
It was really, to touch back on the recruiting thing, that was really hard, man. I mean, because I had never dealt with anything like that before. Not that I didn't believe in myself. I believed in my abilities, but I didn't believe that these big schools I've grown up watching wanted anything, they really want me to come play for them. It's pretty crazy. So, we signed with West Virginia. I did it to be with my parents and to be with my family. I knew that if I went off to a big school, I don't come from money, it'd be hard for them to make it to all the games. And
sure, that
was important to me, man. I grew up in a tight family, even the peripheral families. We were all tight. We always had big Christmases and we grew up together, right? So I wanted them to come along for the ride, you know what I mean? And if I was up in East Lansing, up in Michigan, they weren't going to be along for the ride.
Just on TV.
It was important, right? It was important. So I took WVU, not that they weren't. They were a great school, man. Coach Nealon had he had a storied career and WVU was very well respected.
Sure.
And, it was my home state. So it was an easy choice.
Right. Also, with that being said, I know a little bit about the recruiting trail. WVU wasn't very popular with recruiting in-state kids.
No.
And honestly, the pool was just humongous, for a Division I school.
Yeah.
And WVU or West Virginia, the state itself, just honestly doesn't produce that type of kid very often.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some good kids coming out of these schools and talented kids, but it's just overlooked for whatever reason,
Yeah, I think, look, you learn a lot when you listen to things, but you quickly find out that staff at the time was notorious for going down into the southern states,
right?
And they would pick through those SEC schools. Florida, they were really big, grounded in Florida, so they could go down there and get some really good athletes and bring them back up here. And they didn't look right under the nose a lot of times unless you were a big and the big ones in the state of West Virginia. They didn't go to WVU. They went to Ohio. They went to Ohio State. They went to Penn State.
Yep.
Kurt Warner, the great running back.
Yes.
One of the greatest running backs that's ever come out of the state was from my hometown. He played for Pineville, which is where I'm from. And he went to Penn State.
Yeah.
So.
That's how it goes, man. And you nailed that right on the head. The kids that have the talent to do it, they skip West Virginia. I mean, WVU they don't want to do it.
Sure.
Well, I get it. I mean, as a young kid,
let me tell you something, man. You ever seen East Lansing? You ever seen Michigan State campus?
No, never have.
You talk about beautiful.
Is it?
Now, if there was anywhere I was going to go, man, that was where I was headed.
Cool.
I really liked that campus. I liked Michigan State. That was beautiful up there.
Man.
I really liked it. So, but, I'm a homeboy, so we stayed at WVU, and I don't regret any of it.
Right.
So, but moving the story along, right? So,
So as Caleb just told you, he was a USA Today, top 100 tight end in the nation. I mean, a 5-star recruit. This kid had everything in front of him. All he had to do, and he did, he signed the contract to go play for WVU, full ride scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And this is late winter, right? You probably signed this?
Yeah, it was
early spring.
Late winter, early spring we signed. Yeah.
So you're in, man. You're in to go play for WVU, right?
In there. Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the main topic of today.
Right.
Tell me, what happened in May 7th of 2000 that altered your life forever?
Okay. Well, we finishing up the school year, and they're giving out the award banquet is in Huntington, right? So Dad and I are loading up that morning. It's just he and I. going down to receive my awards.
Is this the All-State banquet?
The All-State banquet.
They used to have that in Parkersburg.
Mm-hmm.
Not to change subject, but I was an All-State receiver growing up, and we had ours down there.
Yep. This one was in Huntington, and we were on 77, man, just outside of Beckley. You know, anytime we traveled north, that's where we've been through this road. We've been on this piece of road for, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But we were, our rear end was hooked at a high speed and sent us off the road into a roll at a high, like I said, at a high moving speed. We were both ejected that morning from the vehicle, and somehow both ended up underneath the Chevy Suburban.
Really?
Yes. So we were mashed up pretty good in that wreck and sustained a lot of injuries. And my father ended up passing away shortly after the incident, within hours. And then I was touch and go for the next, probably that day.
Man.
They got me over to the hospital in Beckley, and then it pretty much immediately had to fly me to Charleston and try to save my life up there. So it was a bad one. It was a high speed one, and it was a bad one.
Man. So obviously you had a horrific accident. And you were knocked unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Or in and out of consciousness?
No, I was pretty much out. I was out for the next couple of days. I finally I was so heavily sedated. I kind of came through in ICU maybe a couple of days later. It's still really foggy. I don't have any like flashes of the only flash I get, for some reason, I don't know if my mind's made this up or not, but at the crash site, I remember looking up and the sun being in my eyes and somebody being over top of me. But that could be a figment. That could be something. 6 people, which is a really cool story. Good Lord, there's so many cool stories that come out of this bad story. But 2 women and 3 men, 4 men, or 3 women and 3 men rolled the Suburban off of me and my dad.
What?
Yes. No, it was kind of tucked over the hill. You couldn't really see it that good. It wasn't like a bunch of people could see it and it stopped traffic or anything. It was, so the story I got was they rolled this big Chevy Suburban off of me and my dad, and three of the 6 were women, the very small women. I ended up meeting them. They come to the hospital and, introduce themselves, and they thought I was a gymnast. Obviously they couldn't tell, but what had happened was my knee ended up underneath my chin.
Wow.
And so she thought I was just really flexible, but what had happened was the left side of my pelvis was exploded. It had just been demolished in that accident.
Wow, man.
And so I sustained some really bad injuries. Like the thing that almost ended up killing me was the lacerated spleen. So I was bleeding out, right? And they got that under control and saved my life. But, I crushed my pelvis pretty bad. Broken ribs, obviously, lacerated spleen. A lot of mashing injuries.
Man. Oh, my gosh.
A lot of nerve damage.
Of course, you said your dad passed away in the accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you was in ICU, from what I understand, for a while.
Yeah, I was in probably ICU for 8 or 10 days, and then stepped down for another 5 or 6 days. Then the rehab unit for a month and a half after the wreck. Yeah.
Man. So, was you able to attend the services for your father, or
no?
How'd that work out?
I didn't. The way they explained it to me was, and it was kind of, I had a tube run down my throat while I was in ICU. So the way I would communicate with people is I would write on their arm, and when they would come in the room and stuff, and I would ask questions and this and that. But they said I never asked about that. I guess I think I already knew. Yeah. For some reason, somehow, I already knew, and I never asked. But no, they had the funeral and stuff while I was in. They said, my dad was a guy. He was a very big presence in the community. He was president of Little League for like 12 or 13 years. He actually helped build a Little League complex and stuff. So he was very well respected in the. He was a coal miner, that had done a lot for the community. He had 3 kids, so I have an older brother and a younger sister, and he was he really helped the community as far as with the sports and stuff.
Yeah.
So they said the funeral was a lot of people showed.
I bet.
There was a lot of people there and came to show their condolences. But I didn't get to make that. I was touch and go for a while.
Yeah.
And I was in the hospital, I think, from start to finish for probably 2 months.
Wow, man.
And was in a wheelchair for 3 months or so. And
man,
it was bad. I really messed up my pelvis.
Yeah. So, obviously WVU, you're a signed athlete with WVU. Mm-hmm. How did they interact, or did they even interact at this point? I mean, what went on there? I mean,
well, the coaching staff, Coach Nealon and Coach Dunlap, which was my recruiter, and Coach Donnie Young, Coach Stewart, the good ones.
Yeah.
Everybody knows those names if you watch WVU, and they all came down the room, and I vaguely remember them coming down, but they come down. There was no question. There was never a question, are they going to keep the scholarship or anything like that? That was kind of like an afterthought.
Really? That's awesome,
So
man.
they just said, get better. That was the main, get better. And I had a long road. I ended up being almost a year and 5 months from the date of the accident till the time I would completely be rehabbed.
Really?
Due to a part of the thing that comes with a pelvic injury is usually when you get mashed up like that is your urethra will be snapped in half.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So I was, I had what they call a suprapubic catheter for almost a year and a half, where I would actually release my urine into a bag through a tube that they poke through the pubic bone. And that's how I would go number one for about a year and a half. Wow. And then, what happened, reason it takes so long is there's so much trauma to the pelvic area, right? This is what I was told by my doctors. They can't go in and do any type of surgery like that to get to the urethra tube because there's so much swelling and so much blood that it has to drain itself naturally before we can get in there. That's what I was told.
Man.
And so it was a long road because what happens to an 18-year-old when you get a suprapubic catheter, those things aren't very comfortable. And, once I got up and moving about, it become my worst nightmare. The tube was in there for so long that crystals and stuff started forming in the bladder because it was still a very inactive bladder. And it became very painful. That became, aside from the wreck, obviously losing my father, teaching myself how to walk again, getting the stuff back from my hips and getting all that lined out became such a small part of my road to recovery because this urethra tube became such a pain in my side. It was so bad.
Wow.
I'll never forget this moments of crying because it was just so frustrating because I knew surgery couldn't be completed to where they could go in and reattach my urethra and get the suprapubic catheter out until no less than a year or so away. I mean, there was just no way around it. There was no hurrying it up. There was no quick way around it. So, that day that I got that thing out, Steve, let me tell you something. It was on my birthday, August 27th. I'll never forget it. Yeah, we traveled down. There was such a mess in that pelvis from the accident. They ended up sending me, Dr. Weiner, my doctor in Charleston, urologist. He ended up sending me to his buddy, Dr. Angermeyer, at the Cleveland Clinic, which was one of the top in the nation. Well, once they got in there and looked around, he said, I want to send you to the guy that taught me everything. So I've been passed up now, not up, forget about it, passed upwards in skill level twice now. So they're sending me to this gentleman named Dr. Gerald Jordan in Norfolk, Virginia. And he's the one that he develops his own tools. He's the one that teaches people how to do his techniques. So he's like the top dog when it comes to urology, especially severed urethra tubes. So we're on the right track now. And I finally, we got a date set for it to be all taken care of. And, you talk about a long road. That was a long road because I was up walking around at this point.
Yeah.
But it had become such a pain and it was so uncomfortable that I didn't even want to get up and walk around because I had to my world revolved around making sure that didn't go off and stuff. Because it was so hard to explain with all those crystals and in the bladder that had started to build up.
Yeah.
And with that tube in there, you know, you have to insert the catheter tube. It gets in there and pokes and prods around. It's just a pain like you've never felt. Now, I'm sure some people that's had like gallstones or bladder stones or whatever may can relate, or, you know, childbirth or whatever.
Right.
That's what I would relate it to, because, I mean, if I was a woman and I knew what that felt.
Right.
But like, I from somebody that was just coming off of this horrific pelvic injury, it didn't hold a light to what was going on in my bladder. So I was sitting here thinking, man, this has got to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
But one of the happiest days of my life was getting that thing out of my body. Good Lord.
So your mindset at this point, are you still thinking about, I still want to be this football player that I've always been my entire life. Are you still thinking about trying to make a run at this, or what?
I tell you what, looking back on it, man, yes, to answer that short, but, you know, I knew that there was so many obstacles between that point and where I was that we needed to take care of some things first.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm still 18 years old, man.
Right.
I'm an 18, 19-year-old kid that has had something jerked out from under his feet. So there's a lot of demons I'm battling on that end. Plus, I'm having to rehab. You know, I just want to take a quick second out of all of this, because my brother, he had just finished up physical therapy school, and he was a part of, I had crushed my shoulder blades as well.
What?
Yeah. So I was under that. I was mashed right under that
Holy
suburban.
smokes.
Well, he was a big part of, you know, he was doing his rotations and stuff down in, so he did a lot of my therapy.
Wow.
And was very lucky, because, boy, you talking about never wanting to hit somebody so hard in my life. Man, he would just drive me crazy. But he stayed after me, man. I mean, he was in my hip pocket like, we got to go do this. We got to do this. And I was like, get out of my face.
No
I was just
kidding.
in such pain all the time, and I didn't get it, but he did. And he knew the only way to back to the top was getting your therapy in every day. And boy, that was a rough road. But he did a great job on my shoulders and stuff. He did a great job on everything, being a big brother for one. But he, you know, my mom and my little sister and my brother, boy, you know, you could tell all that work that we did as a family growing, you know, it really prepared us for something like this.
Right.
Sure, it hurt them, but at the same time, they stepped up. All of them did. And not just them, but my peripheral family. I was telling you, my extended family.
Right.
They all stepped up. Everybody stepped up.
That's awesome.
And there's so many, Steve, we could talk for days, because there's so many avenues of this thing. When your body goes to a big trauma like that, it's crazy what all, you know, there's the nerve firings, and like to this day, I still battle my left leg. It's got a big dead nerve in it, which would end up being the reason, not to jump ahead in the story, but reason I couldn't play football anymore. And, but yes, to answer your question, man, I still wanted to, but there was a lot in between that, actually getting back to Morgantown, or getting to Morgantown for the first time. If you'll think about it, this happened the day after prom.
Wow, man.
Yeah. I left prom. We left the morning after prom. And so, I mean, there's just such a big blank space of unanswered. I didn't get to make my graduation. I didn't get to make my father's funeral. And these little things will start adding up when we get to,
yes, they do.
We'll get to the next, you know, a little bit of the story, but, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I did want to go, but there was a lot of stuff that had to get figured out first before I could make it back to Morgantown.
So did you like skip a year, or I don't want to say skip a year, but what was the gap between you getting back to Morgantown? Because I know you eventually got back to Morgantown on scholarship, right?
Yeah, that happened in May of 2000.
2000, yeah.
So then fast forward to 2002, it was like a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, total. Went up for the spring semester. And it would have been the 2001, 2002 year up there, right? Yeah. So, and when I got there, man, I reported for, you know, the team. I was on the team, and by that time, Nealon had retired, and Coach Rodriguez had come in. And, you know, I can't say how easy he made the transition. He was very good. Coach Rod he was awesome, and he was 100%. He said, "You do what you need to do."
That's outstanding.
Take, you know, he said, "I don't know what you can and can't do." He said, "I don't either." So, you know, we jumped in it like a cannonball, right? We just jumped in, and I just tried to see what all I could start, you know, what I could do. And And it wasn't very long, man. I realized real quick within probably about a month, month and a half, couldn't do it anymore, man. That level is a whole nother level. And I was at that level, right? But these injuries that I had sustained, it wasn't that I was out of shape or anything like that. I didn't go back up back there like in top shape, ready to go, but there had been something taken from my body.
You're physically different.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
the nerve damage and the big toe, it's the nerve that controls the big toe, has a lot to do with your leg movements and stuff. This wasn't as explosive as that level requires you to be.
Definitely.
Right. And so when you're a big man that you can move, that's a lot of it, right? Is being able to explode and get out of your set and stuff like that. So it was, like I said, it took a few weeks, probably took a couple months, and I hung in there.
Yeah.
Coach Elias was the strength coach at the time. He could see I was struggling, and it was one of those dirty elephants in the corner you didn't want to look at. You knew he was standing there, but you didn't want to talk to him.
Yeah.
But finally, man, I just broke down. I got home one day, and I didn't stay in the dorms my first year. Heck, I was almost 20 years old. I was like, I'll just get an apartment, and Coach Rob was cool with that. And it was right beside the stadium up there, and went home and just sit on my couch, man. Just cried for a long, long time because I was in such pain. It was a different kind of pain. It wasn't like an out of shape pain. I wasn't sore. It was just my body had changed. And those gifts that I had been given weren't no longer around.
Yeah.
And as an athlete, these good athletes, if you're a good athlete, you'll know you'll lean on those abilities. And if you can do something, man, it makes those hard practices a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, those practices weren't very easy anymore, and especially at the Division I level. And it was a pill to swallow, and it was rough. So I sit there, made the decision. I called my mom. I told her, I said, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. Not that I don't want to, I just can't.
Yeah.
I don't think my body's able to. And so the next day I went into Coach Rod's office, and I told him, I said, hey, man, I said, I don't want to quit. I said, but I can't do this anymore. And you can give me a big hug. He got up from behind his desk and walked around because he didn't know why I was coming in there. I just popped in and just told him. And he said, man, whatever you need. He said, we'll put you on the coaching staff. You can be a student coach and you can finish out your scholarship. Oh, yeah. Never blinked an eye.
That's outstanding.
And so that's what I did, man. I jumped under Coach Trickett. Big shout out to Coach Trickett. He was rough, but he told us somebody to talk a little shit to you, man.
Yeah.
But he was good, man. He was the best. He was the highest paid in the nation at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. Man. I was 20 years old. I didn't know what in the crap was going on. I didn't know. All I knew was I couldn't play like I used to be able to play. And so went under Coach Trickett, was the O-line student coach. And, those guys were my best friends. And so anyway, I've been around they knew who I was. They knew I was coming in, and I'm still friends with Jamal Adai, good buddy of mine. I mean, we were all in that same class, Rashid, all of us, we were all in the same, Quincy, Rasheed Marshall, all those guys, we were all there at the same.
Cool.
Now, they were ahead of me because they didn't have that year. They had to wait out, but it was the same year as those guys.
That's awesome.
They were cool, though, man. That experience was awesome. It was. It kind of faded towards the end, but, after 4 years of being there, it was kind of like, trying to do my own thing. And, there's just there's a lot that takes place when you're in college. I'll put it like that. From year one to year 5, 6. But, the journey was tough. And there's a lot that had to take place after, though, I decided to tell Coach Rod I couldn't play anymore.
I mean, they could have easily said, man,
we need this money. We need this scholarship. Yeah.
We have this scholarship that we're giving you.
Sure.
That says a ton about the character of that coaching staff and the leadership there at WVU. I mean, they could have easily said, man, we just need to give this scholarship money to somebody else. I mean, that could have been as simple as that. And they decided to keep you on scholarship. Man, I didn't know that side of the story, man. That impresses the hell out of me.
Oh, yeah, man. I got a free ride.
I mean, that is outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, you're coaching and you don't know shit about coaching.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And well, you know what? It was cool though, man. I had been submerged. You know, when you, it's just like if you go to another country and you don't speak the language, you will pretty soon.
Absolutely. Well, it's like anything you get good at growing up. I mean,
plus, I was a football player.
Absolutely. You played your whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, you get football.
Right.
Maybe not the exact science that they're at.
Yeah, and you know, when you start out as a student coach, you're basically you go get the water.
You go get the water.
You're glorified. I mean, you just but you're there to soak it in, man.
Sure,
you're a sponge.
Yeah.
And so that was fine with me.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I was a part of it, and I was on the sidelines for all the games and stuff. It was cool, but you know, there was a lot of parts that were tough. I didn't get the rings. You know, we won a lot of bowl games during that run.
Did,
We were pretty good. I didn't get any of that stuff, which is okay. I mean, I got a free education out of it. So I know a lot of my friends that are still paying college bills.
That's awesome.
But and that's the kind of perspective you have to have, man. And it was hard to get to that point where you can have that kind of perspective because, for a long time I didn't. And I was really...
how long did it, you know, this might be a personal question, but how long did it take you to find that spot in your soul that's holding that pain and acknowledge it almost? Because I don't know if you've heard the last couple episodes that I did here. It took me a long time to find some of that in myself about some things that happened to me. I mean, do you think you found that yet?
I tell you what, with my dad, no, I haven't. And it's so strange. He was such a good dad. He was such a good dad. It was crazy how good he was. And I know everybody thinks their dad's the best.
Yeah.
And that may be the case. But he was, the way that he and I didn't get to part on good terms we did. We were fine. But I'm just saying, like, I didn't get to see him go. I didn't even get to see him at the funeral, right? So that part is still, we'll say, on the shelf, right?
Sure.
I don't know what it takes for me to get closure on that because it was so abrupt and so so unexpected that I may never.
You may never.
But I do think about him almost. It used to be daily. I'm not going to lie to you and say I still think about him every day, but pretty much every other day for 20 years I've thought about him, right? And Well, the thing with the athletic gifts, that was, boy, I was mad about that. As a young man, when you still got your ego and full of piss and vinegar, I was really upset about that, man. I held a lot of, I tried to drown it. I tried to drink it away, and I tried to, plus being at the party school of the nation, that's pretty easy to do. That's not a hard thing to try to do, right? But it seemed like, and the only reason I knew that's what the drinking was for, because you either drink or you're not, right?
Right.
Anytime I got drunk and got mad, that was the first thing that popped in my head, is that, damn it, man, I was supposed to be playing. And so it wasn't another issue that was coming up. It was always, I was supposed to play football for WVU, and I was a pretty good athlete. And, I didn't even get to showcase any of it, right? I mean, we did win a state championship in high school. That was cool. I mean, I was a big recruit. That was cool. But, you really, in the whole statewide, I was going to be able to step up and take this scholarship and show that I earned it and show I was worth every bit of an in-state scholarship.
Right.
And then I can play with those guys. And I didn't get to, man. And it was years. It was at least... probably through until I graduated. I mean, it was probably 5 or 6 years down the road, because there was an incident there. So I didn't finish in 4 years. I actually had to take some time off and finish. I think I finished in 5 or 6 years, but it was rough, man. It was almost as hard. Letting that go was almost as hard as the catheter.
Yeah,
it was but you have to really realize, unless could I have made the NFL? I have no idea. Under that tutelage, under that program for 4 or 5 years, they may have redshirted me. They may have not. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty daggone good. But I can't say that. I'm not going to sit here and say.
I understand.
So that's one of those unknowns. But, and that's not why, I was mad. I was mad because my dad didn't get to see me play at the next level. Man, that was his. I can remember going on those recruiting trips, man, when they would for the official visits and stuff. There was like this road trip we did one summer. It was in between my junior year and senior year, and we took off. We went to Michigan State, did a private workout at Northwestern, came back through Ohio State. It was like a big, like, we left out and we gone for a couple weeks.
Nice.
And I can remember him just standing in the background at Michigan State camp. It was when Coach Saban was still there.
Yeah.
And I can remember him just looking over and see, he was like the happiest. It was almost like God knew it was coming, so he was giving him this.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so perfect. That trip, that little road trip with just he and I together like that.
Damn, man.
It was like looking back on it, man, it was heavy because it was so perfect. And I'll never forget looking over him and just seeing the joy. Like, he was just full. He was so full. And that's what I like. That helps me deal with it. I think God put us on that little road trip together right before it was all over. You know, that was like the top for him because he knew, maybe God knew he wasn't going to get to see me play college football, so he got to see me do that stuff. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, that's a heck of a story. So obviously you finish out your college time and get your degree, and you live in Morgantown for a while. How do you think, this is a life-altering event, a complete life-altering event for you and your family. How has it shaped you, into the man that you are today? I don't even know how to ask this question. Obviously this is just a complete life-altering event for your entire family. How do you, go about every day now I've had this question asked to me a lot. I've thought about this question a lot, and you don't get to answer this question right away because you don't know who you're going to become for a while. Absolutely. Some fires will melt you down, and some fires will harden you, right? And so this wreck, it changed me as a person, right? From what I was in high school to what I got spit out as at college. Yeah. Those are two different kids. Mm-hmm. That one kid had everything in the world going for him and was very good at what he was doing in a couple of different sports, to somebody that had everything taken away from him one day, not only, and his father on top of that taken away. So as a young man trying to figure all that out, and that wreck, it taught me a bunch of things. A lot of lessons got learned. With the catheter, I'd say patience, right? There was no way around it. I had to wait on that surgery. Yeah. And until this day, I've become a very patient person. Now I might lose my patience on something small like that, but I understand patience. I know what it means to be patient because I was in a living hell and was told, you're just going to have to live with it for about a year or two until this thing gets cleared out so we can go in there and do surgery. And so that was a big lesson, was patience. And the quickest lesson you learn is not to take. I'm very gracious, man. I have a lot of gratitude coming out of it. Didn't at the time, but I'm very grateful, man, for what's around me and what I have, and not for what I don't have. I don't try to focus on stuff I don't have. Right. I try to be very grateful for the things I do have. And I was quoted. They did my graduation out on the state chain. We had made I don't know if Greg told you this, but I was a catcher in high school. I was a state. No. Yeah, I was an all-state catcher in high school, right? What? Yeah, so our team had this happened right in the middle of the state championship baseball tournament. And so we had made it. We were in there. And we ended up having my graduation at the park there in Charleston. That's where they wheeled me out and did all that stuff. Yeah, I was a big baseball fan. I love baseball. I didn't know that. Yeah, and but at the graduation, when I was wheeled out, they had everybody was in tears, man. The whole deck, both sides, they had both teams lined up. Yeah, the reporter, he was in tears. Everybody was, it was a big sob fest. It was pretty crazy looking back on it. But is there anything you'd like to say to the crowd? And I just said, don't take anything for granted. And really, it kind of just hushed the whole place because it was true, man. If there's ever been a case of anything, don't take your family for granted. Don't take your gifts for granted because they're here one second and they're gone the next. And that was a very quick lesson learned. The long game lesson was probably patience. And, there was a lot of hate that had to filter out
over the years, that was something that you just, I think, getting older and becoming more wise, but from that wreck, it taught me a lot of different lessons. But the main one was being patient and learning to let things happen and unfold on their own.
Yeah.
That's what's really important. If you try to force something,
Mm-mm.
if you try to fit a square in a circle,
yeah,
a lot of curse words, a lot of slamming and banging. That's life, though, man.
Yeah.
If you try to I tell you what I learned, man. I was selling 4-wheelers a couple years ago, and this was so funny because it was a lesson that I learned on my own. Nobody had to tell me this. You usually got the old guy and the old veteran that'll tell you.
Yeah.
This happened to me, man. I used to sell a lot of 4-wheelers. I was very good at it, and anytime I tried to sell, if there was a bonus one on the floor. Anytime I tried to sell that one to somebody and force it on somebody, that deal would go horribly. It was a mess. Even though they wanted a 4-wheeler, they were in there about a 4-wheeler. If I tried to steer them towards one, that deal something would always happen.
Yeah.
But anytime I let them just kind of pick it out naturally, and, it would never fail, though. If you try to force it, man, there was always a hiccup.
Right.
And I think I took that, man, and I started putting that and applying it to a lot.
Mm.
Yeah,
man, I tell you, I don't even know how to counter that, dude. That story it's amazing. So obviously you have a lot of life experiences and you're going to learn more as you get older. I mean, like I said, you're going to find, you might not ever find it in your heart where that thing's going to open up when you don't want it to. But if you do, my advice would be just to embrace it.
Right.
Let it happen. Talk about it. Don't hold it in. Don't hold it in ever.
Right.
I mean, I did that for a long time. And once you start opening up about things, man, and believe me, I don't have an education in this crap, but talk about it, man.
Yeah.
Just or teach somebody about it, or just, let it affect what it is you're doing during that week. I mean, in a positive way.
I agree. You and I spoke briefly yesterday about it, and I told you that, I've never really talked about this in this extent. To this extent, it's been a lot of generic replies over the years, especially when it first happened. It was a big deal. Sure. In the news in West Virginia, and I kind of just formed these generic responses to the questions and what. Not that I was faking anything, or it just become easy to do it that way. And when you get asked something, the same thing a lot of times, it becomes just a convenience thing to get your response ready and fire it away, and don't put a lot of thought into it, man. And I don't, now, talking about it today, and like I said, we could go on for hours. There were so many things happen in the course of that year and a half of recovery and stuff, and the whole thing of me being at college trying to really deal with losing of all the things, my father, and the one thing I didn't lose was the scholarship, right?
Yeah.
So we lost the gifts and we lost our father, but I stuck it out, man. There was times that I didn't do so hot in class and was struggling on that end of things, but once you start to grow up and grow older and you start seeing the bigger picture, and seeing what's really important, I buckled down, finished up school, and made sure that I didn't let that slip through. I wanted to finish that out, and did. So there was a lot of unbelievably there was a lot of good come out of that wreck.
Yeah.
With all the bad that came out of it, and you can be a hateful old person that just sees the worst, and if that happens, I'm sure this has happened to someone else. I'm sure
a similar story, probably, yeah.
And they may have chosen the road to be very hateful, and I was on that road for a while. I mean,
sure.
I tried to drown it, like I said. I tried to put enough booze in my body to, kill an army, but something just kept shining through, right? At the end of every morning you wake up, man, and just something would just keep, I think it was that. I think he instilled enough of that in me. I think he instilled enough of, you better do the right thing,
right?
Boy. That kind of thing, to where I didn't let myself go a whole way. So I'm very thankful for that, man. I mean, I touched on having good parents, and I think that was the biggest reason why I didn't fall apart after this happened.
Right.
Just because of the way they raised me. And I knew that there was, it is a big deal, but it ain't that big of a deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, just from meeting you today, I pick up on a lot of good character traits that I enjoy in people, and I know you have them. I can sense it, and I can tell that you're moving forward in your life, and you're injecting all those things that your parents, your mom and dad, your peripheral family, like you call it, have taught you, and I can see it happening. And you probably don't even realize you're doing it, but I can just tell you're passing that on to people around you. Even like today, man, I'm getting a vibe off you that you're a genuine dude. I can tell that. As bad as as rough as your story is, you're moving forward and you're touching people around you with the tragedies and experiences that you've had. I can just tell, man, you're not always going to be perfect.
Right.
Nobody is, but I can tell that you've learned from it, and you're pushing out the good energy from it. The
good vibes are starting. Yeah. I appreciate that.
I can tell it, man.
It's been a long 20 years, man. And I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know how long this will last right now, but we're gonna rock it till the wheels fall for this thing because it's too good. It's too fun. I've been in the best mood I've been in years.
That's freaking outstanding.
I'm working for myself. I'm supporting my family, and it took a lot of different roads to get here. I worked for other people. And I would get out there and work. It's not like I did what I had to do to get it done. But you know what? Here in the last year, I've become so healthy mentally, and I've made sure that my family, anytime they need something, I have that ability to do that now. Man. And I'm a better person because of it.
Absolutely.
I can't, my wife is a big part of that. She's very supportive of me, and she has supported me when, 5 years ago, I was a mess, man.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I was still a good dude, but I wasn't great. I mean, I didn't have as one of my good friends, I didn't have my shit in one sock. You know what I'm saying?
I've heard that before.
And it reflected. Everything around me was a mess.
Yeah.
But she kept telling me, dude, get that. You need to use that smoker more. You need to figure out a way to use that smoker more. You need to do that. And I would always, yeah. I knew I was good at it. I had been catering for a couple years at the point. But she kept on, man. She kept on. My brother kept on. And honestly, that rib video last year has just started a whole new chapter. Really, you're in the middle of it. It's happening very organically. I'm letting it happen. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm not trying to get too big, too quick.
Right.
I'm trying to let everything just come as it gets handed to me. I'll take it and then I'll just pass it on. You know what I mean? That's the way I'm trying to do this thing.
And your previous chapters, those will never close, in life. I mean, I know mine hasn't. No, you can always go back, and you're always going to go back in your life and touch on chapter 1, 2, 5, 6, and then back to 1, 2, or whatever. It's just part of life, but they will never close. So don't ever feel like, I don't ever feel like that, crap, I shut that chapter down, because it doesn't happen in life. I mean, I'm 43 years old. I'm not a master of life by any means, but that's what I've learned growing up is all the bull crap I've lived through and experienced. I still remember that stuff, but I'm at the age now and the maturity that I can pull the good stuff from it and learn from the things that weren't so good, and use those good examples to filter through people I'm around, or even myself, to help me into the next situation I'm in. And, I suck at life every damn day too, dude, at some point. We all do, but it's that maturity growing up, and I can see it in you, man. It's happening. And
I tell you one thing that I've come to the realization of, and you'll do this the older you get, man. And these things will just kind of like naturally, you'll start to learn stuff about yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And for the longest time, man, I was a self-saboteur, man. You know what I mean? Like I would just really sabotage myself. I would push things to the back until it was pressure time. It was go time, and it was either jump or get off. And for the longest time, man, I did that to myself. And instead of just doing what I needed to do, get it done, get it knocked out, I would just sabotage myself. I would always do that, man.
Me too.
And the more I became aware of it, the more I started calling myself out internally.
There you go.
You got to have these talks with yourself. Man. You got to talk to yourself.
Yep.
And you have to, don't just numb it out. You're telling yourself this stuff for a reason.
Right.
It's you telling you, right? But you have to listen to it, right?
You do.
Which we talked about listening earlier, man. If you don't listen to it, man, I would probably continue to self-sabotage. And, I'd like, you can play it off, I like to play under the pressure. Bull. That's bull, man.
It is bull crap.
And, you have to call yourself out and make you, like you said, hold yourself accountable, man. And if the time provides itself, you self-advocate too. You can go to bat for yourself, but for the most part, you need to listen to yourself.
You do,
and
listen to the people around you. I had a hard time taking advice from everybody that saw that asshole in me. I mean, that's the truth, man. There was a point in time, and I tell my wife this all the time. I don't know why you stayed around, and I don't. I was a complete asshole.
Yeah.
And I hate to cuss too much, but if I go back 10 years and find myself somewhere, man, I'd kick that dude's butt. I ain't lying.
I've heard you say that previously on the podcast.
And it's because
it must be true, right? I mean, it must
and
really.
I'm way better than that.
Yeah.
And I hated that I had to learn those lessons, man.
Yeah.
And put the people that I cared the most about through the things that I put them through. And it wasn't like I was a bad dude, but it's just now I look back, I'm like, dude, man, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you just, it's so easy. Look, hindsight's always 20/20.
Absolutely.
Right, man? And you can't get caught up in that. You just have to be humble, man. You have to, you have to have a little bit of humility.
Yep.
And just understand that we're all here on this crazy boat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let's finish this show off, man. I got one last question for you, and I'd like to ask everybody for this, man. And what is your biggest accomplishment in your life right now?
Well, you know what, man? I have to say I'm living in the middle of it, man. I've figured out a way to actually do what I love. And we're not all so lucky to do that, man.
You're right.
A lot of people, not saying that they they're miserable, but they still have to work and have a job that they don't really love that job. Right. I have found a way to cook for people and make money at it and support my family.
That's insane.
And I get to work for myself. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. When I look, especially when 5 or 6 years ago, man, I was working for other people and miserable and not able to do what I'm doing now. And I've always heard that. Find something you'll love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's true, man. It's really true. I have a beautiful wife. My kid, I have an 8-year-old boy. I'm so proud of him. He is mine. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that is great. But honestly, man, I couldn't be in a better place right now mentally and, just the way things are going in life with this barbecue business. I figured out a way to do it on my own without having to ask for any help or just do hard work, man. Yeah. I've been cooking for 10 years doing this daggone smoker.
Yeah.
And it's finally, the wheels are starting to turn. You know what I'm saying?
That's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
I'm very motivated by your story. And, like I told you, Greg was telling me about it before we hooked up. And I'm like, I got to hear this one firsthand, and it's incredible.
There's no doubt about that accident shaped my family. But like I said, there's some fires that'll melt you away and there's some fires that'll harden you, right? And your hardest parts are the parts that stick, that's going to stick. That's who you really are, right?
Right.
That stuff that melts away, that's just not, that's really
it's
just
plastic.
That's who, you act like you are in front of your friends and stuff, right?
Yeah,
but
it takes plastic.
It takes a long time to learn, what parts are hard and what parts are, but that accident was a terrible thing. And for a long time, I focused on the terrible parts that came out of that wreck instead of really looking at what I'm learning from all this stuff. And, the older you get, the quicker you learn those lessons.
Right.
But, I can't, I'll never say I'm thankful for that accident. Right. It took my father from me. So, to say that would be, it just wouldn't be right. So, but it did make me who I am today.
Right.
And sometimes I'm stubborn, sometimes, but I do know who I am. I know exactly who I am. And it did take a few years, but I think I am who I am because of that accident.
Man, I'm blessed to meet you, dude. I ain't lying, man.
Same here, man.
I am super blessed to meet you today.
Absolutely, man. Greg told me, he said, you could be on there. I was like, man, I would geek out. I'm such a nerd, though. I really am just the biggest dork in the world, but I wanted to be on a podcast. And, man, I'm a little kid the whole way driving up here. It took me about 2.5, 3 hours, and I was just like, I don't care, man. I'm going to go here and be on this podcast. I thank you for having me, man. It's been great.
Thank you for coming up. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that show. I know it might not come across how much we're vibing off each other right now.
Yeah.
But we are. I mean, I'm feeling it. And I want to thank you personally again for coming up. And we'll wrap this show up here in a second. But you got anything else you want to say real quick?
Oh, yeah. Thanks you for having me. Obviously, first and foremost, thank you for having me. But, we're going to have to get Greg in a headlock and jerk him in here. And all three of us are going to have to get in here because I owe him one now. I'm about to dig up some dirt and we'll go ahead and get that. We'll go ahead and get that fixed up. Coming for you, Greg.
All right, folks. Hey, this has been another edition of the Life Hacks Podcast. I want to thank my good buddy Caleb for coming up. Like I said before in some of my shows, man, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family. This show is about life. It's about living life, learning from life, teaching life, getting over the humps when they come your way, and they're going to come your way. But if you like what we're doing, tell everybody. This has been a Life Hacks Podcast, and we will catch you later.